Graffiti Bridge was released nationwide on November 2nd, 1990. This was Prince's third full feature film, but his very first musical. The film was written and directed by Prince, but Prince also starred in the film and handled the entire score of the film. The soundtrack for Graffiti Bridge was released on August 21st, 1990. It peaked at number 6 on Billboard's Top 200 and sold over 500,000 copies. Unfortunately, the film Graffiti Bridge was not as successful. It was panned by critics, and on a production budget of $7 million, it only made $4.6 million at the box office. The concept of this film started back in 1987. Prince would go through several different rewrites of the film for the next 2 years. Originally, he wrote the script for Madonna as the lead. He gave her the first rough draft of the script. She read it and immediately turned it down. This being the second film that Madonna had turned down of Prince's, Under the Cherry Moon being the first. She was actually supposed to play Mary in that film, which was Prince's love interest. Before I get into the actual film that was released, let me go ahead and summarize the original film and plot. Like I mentioned before, there were several rewrites over the years, so there was a lot of changes to the script as far as the characters themselves and several of the subplots in the film. But the main storyline stayed somewhat the same. So the Graffiti Bridge that Prince presented Warner Brothers in 1988 went a little something like this. Prince was to play a struggling musician by the name of Camille Blue who had just recently suffered a near-death experience. And ever since this experience, he has these dreams every single night where there is a bridge that links the natural world to the spiritual world. And every night when he tries in his dreams to cross this bridge, there is a guard at the bridge that always asks him, "Hey, do you want to stay a little while?" And before he can answer, he always wakes up from the dream. The city he lives in is ugly and is full of gun violence. And what Camille wants to do is he wants to write music that will change this world. But he is having issues staying focused as he is tempted by worldly things. So an angel is sent to him to help guide him and keep him on the right path. And she does this in two different ways. That is, one, she provides lyrics to him for the songs that he's making. And when he gets out of line, she actually tortures him in a S&M kind of way. She is described as being absolutely beautiful, and in most versions of the scripts that I've seen, she's always topless. He eventually meets and falls in love with a character named Aura. Even though she is human, she is connected to the spiritual world in some type of way. So between Aura and the angel, they are there to keep Camille in line so he can continue to make these songs that will eventually save the world. But even with this spiritual message that he is finding a lot of success in, Aura ends up getting killed in a drive-by shooting. This loss leads Camille to write one of the greatest songs ever, a song that's so great and so spiritually touching that the entire world throws away all their guns. The film would have ended with Camille having another one of his dreams, but this time he gets to answer the guard, "Yes, I would like to stay a little while," and it would end with a shot of him crossing the bridge with the angel and Aura there waiting for him. Of course, there are some versions where he crosses the bridge and meets them and they end up having a threesome. And as you might guess, Warner Brothers said absolutely no to this movie. But Prince had been working on another script aside from this project, and that was a film that was a semi-fictional tale of the band The Time and how they rose to fame. This project was in its infant stages and had been started because Prince had started working with Morris Day again on a new album for The Time called Corporate World. So Prince simply came up with the idea of merging the two scripts. He did this by taking The Time and using them in the storyline as the villains, and then pretty much took all the characters from the Purple Rain film and mixed it in with that, made this gumbo, and served it up to Warner Brothers as Purple Rain Part 2. This was an idea they were on board with, and they greenlit the film. So let's go ahead and talk about the film we actually got. The film opens up with Prince reprising his role as the kid from Purple Rain. He wakes up and sees Aura, his guardian angel, sitting on a windowsill only to disappear. But before she disappears, she does sprinkle a couple little lyrics for him, so he pops out of bed, runs over to his computer, and starts working on a new song. Of course, his lady friend Jill, played by Jill Jones, reprising her role from Purple Rain, although she looks totally different than she did in Purple Rain. She's upset with him because once again he is breaking up their bedroom time to go work on music. So she decides to tell him that, you know what, not only am I leaving you, but I'm also leaving your band and joining Morris's band. Of course, I'm talking about Morris Day from The Time, who is again reprising his role as Morris from Purple Rain. Morris is still the leader of The Time and owns his own club called Pandemonium. We were then brought into a meeting with Morris Day and the rest of the members of The Time. It seems that the band is very upset with Morris because Morris, who owns several different clubs, is making quite a bit of money at all these clubs. So the band feels as though because they're part of this corporation, that if Morris is making more money, then they need to be making more money too. So Morris decides the best way to solve this issue is to have a chili eating contest with his keyboardist, Terry. Terry, of course, loses, and Morris wins, therefore they don't get any more money, and he ends the scene with one of his famous laughs. Back with the kid, while he's getting dressed, an explosion rocks his room, and so he runs up a ladder, which we find out that he lives in the basement, or at least under the stage of his own club called Glam Slam. It appears that someone tried to attempt to bomb his club and destroy it, but it didn't work. After the opening title, we get our first performance of this film, and of course it is by the kid and his new group, the New Power Generation, and the song performed is New Power Generation. This is a great song to start with as it explains what the message the band is trying to put out as far as it being spiritual, uplifting, and slightly political. And with this opening performance, we immediately see the flaws of this film. First off, there are way too many jump cuts in this performance, and nothing musically aligns with what we see being performed. I'm talking about there's instruments being played that are not on the song, and there's instruments on the song that nobody's playing in the performance. Also, lyrically, nothing is aligning up with anybody's lips. And let me explain that I do understand that in a film production, that when someone's singing, they're not actually singing on stage. I get that, but you got to try and line things up way better than this. Anyways, while the kid is playing, Morris pulls up in his limousine and is greeted by his right-hand man, Jerome, again played by Jerome Benton. And he's mad because he doesn't see the Glam Slam on fire and asks what had happened, basically insinuating that he is the one that set the bomb. Jerome tells him that, hey, we followed the plan, it just didn't work. Which then we get one of Morris's great lines of, like I always say, if you want something done right, hire good people to do it. Morris goes to enter the club, but of course there's a little puddle of mud on the sidewalk, and he's too fly to walk across that. So Jerome gets the great idea to take the mink coat off of Robin, which is Morris's main girlfriend in the film, and he throws her mink coat on the ground, building a little bridge so that Morris can step across the puddle. Morris then enters the club and interrupts the kid's set. This is where we get a little bit of backstory. Billy, who owned First Avenue in the film Purple Rain, has since passed, and in his will he left this club to Morris and the kid with 50-50 ownership. I'm not sure if they're ignoring the fact that this is obviously not the same club, or if Billy owned several clubs and this is one of the clubs that they willed to them. Morris then scolds the kid on the fact that the spiritual music that you're making is not filling this club, and therefore they are losing money on their investment. And that the fact that he owns half of this club, he should have a right to what music is played here, which of course the kid totally ignores. So to prove his point, Morris calls the rest of the members of the Time on stage with him, and they perform the song Release It. Now to me, this is even more frustrating of a performance because this is a drum-heavy, drum-focused song, and there's no drummer on stage. But the song is so funky and awesome that when they leave the stage, they take the entire crowd with them. And to add insult to injury, on the way out, Morris decides to stop and pee on one of the kid's plants. Now apparently his pee must be made out of lighter fluid, because after he's done peeing on it, he lights it with a lighter and it just erupts into a massive fire. And the plant is completely engulfed in flames in seconds. Which Morris ends this scene with the line, "Give me my money or this place is mine." After being shown up by Morris and losing his entire crowd to Morris, The kid gets on his bike and decides to take a drive to clear his head. He comes across a bridge that's covered in graffiti, and sitting underneath it like a troll is Aura, the guardian angel that keeps disappearing. This scene really shows how terrible the set pieces are in this movie. Now then, the entire movie is filmed on a soundstage with only a few like actual live in reality scenes, and the set pieces look like they were done by a bunch of high school kids for one of their stage plays. And for whatever reason, Minneapolis looks like Gotham City in this film. I realized that Prince got inspired to get back into making films after being on set for the Batman movie, but apparently he took Tim Burton's idea of what a city looks like and went ahead and repeated it in his own film. He heads back to his club and decides to try and write a new song on his white brick wall on the outside of the club, where apparently he uses paint, and this is where he writes his lyrics for his songs. He can't come up with anything because he has writer's block or something, and goes ahead and takes a nap on his bike, of all places. He's again awakened by Aura, who magically appears and then disappears, of course dropping a few lyrics for him. So he goes ahead and writes a new song on his wall, and then falls asleep on the floor of the back alley like a bum. We then cut to Robin and Morris fighting over money because her coat was ruined from the night before. And with this scene, we again get some more backstory where Robin is actually Billy's daughter, and the club Pandemonium that Morris owns, he actually co-owns with Robin. Their fight is broken up when a couple members of the Time come in with earnings from the night before from the other two clubs, Melody Cool and Clinton's Place. This shows that Morris actually co-owns several clubs in the area in this film called the Seven Corners. We then cut to a scene where a couple members of the New Power Generation are at George Clinton's club called Clinton's Place, where he's performing the song Weekend Funk. As we get a whole bunch of jump cuts as far as what's going on in the crowd, we see that Aura's there checking out the show. We then cut over to the kid playing at his club. He's doing the song Elephants and Flowers in front of a crowd of 7 people. With the TV movie style transition, we now are in the scene where the kid is writing a letter to his deceased father, when he's interrupted by TC, one of his band members, who says, "Hey, you need to come up here, Tevin wants to show you something." We then cut to a scene of Tevin, played by Tevin Campbell, who is Melody Cool's either son, grandson, or nephew. Some relation is there, but it's never clearly said. But anyways, he comes out with a boombox and starts to perform Round and Round in the middle of the street. So if you didn't know that you had come to a musical, you now know you are fully in a musical. And yes, I understand that Purple Rain had a lot of music in it, but it was by no means a musical. All the music that we got that was performed were performed on stages because it was a concert venue. In this movie, people sing and dance in the streets through pretty much from here on out. After Tevin's performance, the kid sees Jill walking by and starts making fun of her for joining Morris's band. And this is where we get the infamous panty drop scene, which Jill actually improvised because during the filming of this movie, she was pretty much mad at Prince the entire time, and this was something she came up with just to make him mad. So the reaction you see on his face is actually genuine. We then cut to Morris and Jerome checking out Aura as she sits on top of the bridge like a billy goat instead of sitting under the bridge like a troll, writing poetry. So the two of them decide to go hit on her and invite her back to their club. We then cut to them pulling up to the club where a couple members of the New Power Generation are checking her out and decide to go back and tell the kid about Morris's new lady. Once inside the club, Aura takes this opportunity to try to witness to Morris and to save his soul. But Morris and Jerome play a little game that ends up getting Aura drunk. And now we go into the most confusing musical number in this film. So Jill is there to perform, and the song she's performing, Love Machine, is not being performed by her. So she's lip syncing to someone else's song even though she's supposed to be singing the song. And then Aura starts singing the song to Morris. So now she's lip singing a lip sync song. And while all this weirdness is happening, we cut to the New Power Generation members running over to the kid saying, "Hey, you need to go to Morris's club and check out this new girl he's got." Which is why we get the scene where she's walking out, falling down drunk. She bumps into the kid, they make googly eyes with each other, and he's kind of like, "Yeah, I got her." This leads into the musical performance of Thieves in the Temple by the kid, which is really just the Prince video of Thieves in the Temple stuck in the middle of this film. So after this full-on music video, we now cut to Morris's place where they got Aura laying on the couch, pretty much almost passed out drunk, and Morris and Jerome are contemplating whether or not to sexually assault her. During this discussion, that's when the kid sneaks in through the back door of the club, blows out all the candles, leaving everybody in the dark, and while in the dark, the kid picks up Aura and sneaks her out the back door that he came into and takes her off to presumably his place. While still in the dark, Jerome and Morris start making out with who they think is Aura, where in fact they're making out with each other. When they realize this, there's a big old commotion in the dark. Both the lamps come on. They're both at opposite ends of the couch. And of course, Jerome passes out and Morris goes and throws up. This scene right here is comedy gold. So the kid does end up taking Aura back to his place so that she can sleep it off. While she's sleeping, we cut into a dream sequence, which is really just a performance of another song, this song being Joy and Repetition. She wakes up the next morning with the kid to greet her in bed. He climbs in and starts to play a little cute game of hangman with her, where the final answer is the word mine, which he points at the word and then points at her. She goes ahead and just shuts him down and points to the sky and says, no, his. She gets out of bed and goes and picks up his sheets of music and starts going through his songs. While going through his songs, she decides to tell him that she does not have much time and also encourages him not to give up. We then cut over to Morris in his office where he's on the phone with the mayor having a big fight with the mayor because apparently he owes the mayor a whole bunch of money. As soon as he gets off the phone though, Jerome comes busting in the door. Jerome's super excited because apparently the other clubs made a ton of money last night, which somehow this turns into a fight between Morris and Jerome. Of course, the way that Morris and Jerome fight is they have a duel of who has the most cash on them. Of course, Jerome thinks he one-ups Morris, but Morris takes off one of his Stacey Adams, and in the heel, he's got a couple $100 in there, thus winning the battle. We then cut back to the kid and Aura talking about spiritual things when we go into one of the most awkward love scenes of all time. I mean, I don't understand why nobody is kissing. There's just a lot of hugging and a lot of rubbing, and then there's a full conversation going on between the two of them, but neither one of them is moving their lips. The only good part of this scene is we get to hear the song The Question of You, which is a fantastic song. With a new brand of confidence, the kid busts open the doors of Pandemonium and challenges Morris and the Time to a battle of the bands, the winner gaining full control of Glam Slam. Morris tries to scare him off by doing a whole bunch of trash talking, which is a pretty comical scene in itself, but it doesn't faze the kid at all, and he stands his ground and says, no, battle me. And again, the winner gets the Glam Slam, which Morris says, fine, let's do this. So with round one, we get the Time performing the song Shake. Prior to their performance though, they snuck into the Glam Slam and busted up all the instruments for the new power generation, that way they couldn't perform. But somehow they found not broken instruments and performed the song Tick Tick Bang in the parking lot of Pandemonium with a whole bunch of fireworks. Unfortunately, round one goes to the Time, and in his frustration, the kid throws his guitar through the window of a store and drives off to the bridge, presumably to take his own life. In the meantime, we get a dance scene from No Booty and a G-String Robin Powers, who's trying to convince Morris that she needs to stay with him and leave that Aura girl all alone. While this is happening, the members of the Time are going to Melody Cool and Clinton's place, and the plan is to rough up the owners to force them into signing over their clubs to Morris. Melody Cool, played by Mavis Staples, says no to this and breaks out into the song Melody Cool. She is also apparently Thor because when she throws her hands up, lightning and thunder hits the skies. During this performance, we cut over to the bridge where the kid is there contemplating taking his own life, when Aura convinces him not to do so and drops this little gem, when another man screams, you must learn to whisper. We cut back to the performance of Melody Cool when the kid shows up to yell at George, who is now signing over the deed to Morris. One of George's band members grabs the deed, jumps into a Jeep, and speeds off. It's at this moment that Aura decides, I will do whatever it takes, and she walks out into the path of the Jeep and gets hit. She ends up being killed and picked up by the Ghostbusters ambulance. This is when Morris awkwardly asks the kid, how do you want to die? We then cut to a zoomed in shot of the kid's face, and we hear Aura's quote, you must learn to whisper, being whispered over the scene. He then performs the gospel ballad, Still Would Stand All Time. This song is very powerful and actually moves Morris to squash the beef, and they end up hugging it out, leaving full ownership of the club Glam Slam to the kid. I used to always write this off as a goofy Prince film with an amazing soundtrack, but after watching it 923 times, I still think it's a goofy Prince movie with an awesome soundtrack, but I totally see the potential of what this film could have been. The original concept of being able to walk in and out of the natural and spiritual world would have required a much higher budget and a much more experienced director, which Prince just wasn't. Also, the script needed someone to translate Prince's ideas much better and make them much clearer. With the right team, Prince could have made an epic film out of this, but that would have required him to hire a scriptwriter and a director, and to get, again, a much bigger budget. But I do believe in what he actually made, that there is a better film inside of it. He did have talent with shots like the light noose and the way he was able to center himself on the shot with What Time Is It? I would recommend to the Prince estate to reach out to Shout Factory to restore and re-edit all of the footage of this film. Because if you look at their parent company, Scream Factory, and all the amazing recovery that they're able to do with lost horror films, they're the team to do this. Plus, they're a part of Rhino, which is part of Warner Brothers, so we'd be all in the same circle. Because there's a ton of footage outside of this film to work with. There were 4 musical numbers that was cut, and almost 2 hours worth of reshoots to still play with. I mean, just look at the trailer. 90% of the trailer is not in the film. So I suggest that they restore and remaster all the footage and get a high quality director and editor to re-edit this entire film. And while you're doing that, please make sure you line up the audio with the people speaking. I think everyone will be completely shocked at how much better a film is actually here. Thank you again for joining me on this episode. Please like and share this video as much as possible. And as always, please subscribe to the channel. And until the next episode, I wish you heaven.